This is the Bitcoin 1 month overview reading for September 2022. It's currently August 22nd, 2022, 11:11 p.m. Eastern Time. Look at that, 11:11. Very auspicious. So the overall theme and behavior. Matter of fact, before we get into this reading, guys, let's do a review of what we've seen on the 1 year so far. So we actually have a high correlation and an opportunity to open up a short position at the high in January, right? So in January we have a year's high correlation in January. And we go from that to a low in, well, the end of January and you could say again in February. We have it here in early February, a low. And then we move into a high in April. This is the April cluster. We have a high here on, you could say March 30th, April 1st, or April 3rd again, right? Followed by a decline. April 30th, we're at what appears to be another low for the year. And we have a year's high and a year's low within close time proximity to each other on a 1 year chart here. So far, really on the ball. And then what we see here, we nailed it as far as the correction in August for Bitcoin. At the high in August, there's a notable correction or price point from which we would go lower. And there's the devil card at the low here. So don't be scared out of the market. Don't freak out from Bitcoin. Early September, there's a big breakout. And a trade opportunity at a low and a big breakout, the bottom of a range all the way to the top of a range, and a big move, like a move to reach a distant resistance level. And then we have a year's high the following month in October, in early October. So look out for that, my friends. Very tricky, but a great opportunity if you time it right here in early September. All right, guys. So as far as the overview here, there's a rally along a diagonal trend line, breaking through horizontal resistance, meeting secondary resistance, and pulling back to somewhere between those two price levels. That's the overall theme and behavior for September. It's crossed with a male ruler of nations being highlighted. Behavior in the month's high, there's a fast, sudden move to meet the month's high, and behavior in the low, there's a decline to and through a support level to meet a secondary support level, and then we rotate sideways along a support level at the month's low. On the first, we have a move higher through resistance on a 1 day chart, followed by a decline through. On a multi-day chart, there's a resistance level that we break out through on the first. We don't break out, but we break through on the first, and then we stay above it briefly before breaking back down through the same price level. On the second, we have a breakout. But this is like a tricky breakout. It's before a failure, so a few days later or the next day we have a beginning of a failure. So this breakout on the second leads to a distant resistance level, and then on the third we have a year's high correlator here. Two local highs on a 1 day chart of the third. One that there's a rally that involves a rally along a diagonal trend line breaking that ends with a fast sudden move to the upside and then a breakdown through that diagonal trend line. And then the other local high on the first it involves a notable decline on a 1 day chart out of that high. So by local high, what I mean is when you're looking at a 1 day chart of the third, you're going to see two prominent highs because there's two local highs for the third. We also have a notable move on a multi-day chart, higher, followed by a full retracement back down, and then overnight it looks like we have a notable amount of move, like a big price move on a multi-day chart, or a gap of some kind here between the third and the fourth. Likely a gap down, but it's deceptive, and there's a rally out of it There's a rally out of it, and it looks like a day's high on the fourth at the end of the day, and a good cash out opportunity possibly. There's also a correlation to the male ruler of nations here between the third and the fourth. On the fifth, we have a prominent trough, from which we have a prominent trough on a multi-day chart, from which we have a move out of that trough to successfully turn support resistance into new support on a multi-day chart. The following day, we have another prominent crest for the month, and we're range bound, so we shouldn't see a new high, but likely the same high that we had around the 3rd. Out of that high, there's a notable decline on a one-day chart. It'll stand out. On the 7th, there is a notable decline on a multi-day chart. Looks like possibly even a little bit of a gap down, but we at the day's low on the 7th, we attempt to establish support on a one-day chart. And then it looks like on the 8th we likely have a gap up on the 8th, or we have a day's high on the 8th early in the day, one of those two. But we decline from that day's high to a month's prominent trough or month's low again. So far 2 months highs and 2 months lows. Interesting. On the 9th, we have an important resistance level highlighted. There'll be a lull in volatility at that price level, and then a notable decline on a one-day chart out of that price level, which will be the day's high. There's also a disappointment. So there's a breakout, or there's a failed attempt at resistance that we expect to break through. Most people expect to break through, but we don't. We turn around and we decline through a support level on a one-day chart. And then on the 10th, it's possible we have another crest here on the 10th. We rally at the end of the day on the 9th, and then even in the face of overwhelming headwinds, seemingly overwhelming headwinds, there's a move to the upside on the 10th. There's also a day trade here on the 10th. One of the trades involves the end of a decline marked by a fast, sudden move to the upside. And then the other trade involves a big move to a big decline. Big decline. Resistance and then a big decline. So a big move up to resistance and then a decline back down. On the 11th, we have two local lows. So on a one-day chart for the 11th, there'll be two prominent lows that stand out. One will form when we have multiple headwinds that push Bitcoin lower, and then the other local low will form when we have a period of sideways rotation that ends with a fast, sudden move to the upside. And there'll be a notable price movement here. And there's a speech towards the end of the day, or somebody speaking lies of some sort here between the 11th and the 12th, most more likely on the 12th. And then on the 12th, there's a period of sideways volatility, there's a period of volatility with a sharp dip in the midst of that period of volatility to stand out on a multi-day chart. Decline from the one prominent high on the 12th, that's about midday. And that decline will stand out on a one-day chart. On the 13th, we have what appears to be a day trade and also the opening of a swing trade. There's a lot of price movement early in the day or over the night between the 12th and the 13th. And we have a correlation to a rally along a diagonal trend line, breaking through horizontal resistance, meeting secondary resistance, and then pulling back to somewhere between those 2 price points here on the 13th as well. In the midst of some volatility, we have the opportunity to position ourselves in both directions. I believe you can short Bitcoin through Coinbase, or there's ways to do it. You could short the ETF at this point. So position yourself to play volatility. This card usually means that in the near future there's a price point above it and a price point below it, so it marks a good opportunity for a straddle or strangle. On the 13th, we see one of those trade opportunities involves a move to the upside, a notable move to the upside on a one-day chart, and then a notable move back down. Another of those trade opportunities on the 13th involves selling from overbought territory, from an overbought crest, and then On the third trade opportunity is the end of a decline marked by a fast sudden move to the upside. There's two local lows on a one-day chart for the 13th. One forms after we have a good opportunity at a high, but it's a brief, a very quick opportunity. And then the other local low forms when we attempt to establish support on a one-day chart. On the 14th, there's a notable move to the upside on a multi-day chart, and one local low. It looks like at the end of the day, we have a local low, and there's a period of sideways rotation that ends with a fast sudden move to the upside. On the 15th, we have a big move higher to meet distant resistance, a rally that increases with momentum moving into the day's high on the 15th. And then on the 16th, we revisit past problems. There's a flight to safety, and the one local low on this one-day chart for the 16th involves sideways rotation along a support level with a fast sudden move higher that marks the end of that sideways rotation. Looks like we have a closing of a swing trade and the opening of a swing trade or a day trade here on the 17th. There's a halting of a bullish trend, so. And a correlation to a rally along diagonal trend line, breaking through horizontal resistance, meeting secondary resistance, and then pulling back to somewhere between those two price points. So between the 16th and the 17th, there should be a little bit of a rally, but it's halted with marked by a sharp decline through a key support level on a multi-day chart. That's the 17th. The trade opportunities, one involves profit taking from overbought territory, from an overbought crest, I should say, and the other one involves the end of a decline marked by a fast sudden move to the upside. There's one local low on the 17th, on a one-day chart of the 17th, and it forms after a brief visiting of a higher crest. It's a brief opportunity. On the 18th, we have a correlation for a month's low here. Something having to do with Congress may be highlighted, or something to do with legislation of some sort. And there's a local low, a month's low correlation here, a month's low correlation. Out of that month's low correlation on the 18th, we have another move to the upside somewhere here between the 18th and the 19th along a diagonal trend line, breaking through horizontal resistance, meeting secondary resistance, and then pulling back to somewhere between those two price points. There's two trade opportunities, the closing of a swing trade and the opening of a swing trade, or possibly just a day trade as well. In the midst of some bearish price swings with a sharp dip in the midst of that on a one-day chart or on a multi-day chart. The one local low forms after we visit a crest that's an opportunity, but it's briefly visited. We decline pretty hard on the 20th, declining to and through a support level, and then we turn around and revisit that support level to reuse it as support. Something happens like globally that's kind of like sudden and surprising, or something to do with Bitcoin sudden and surprising here towards the end of the day on the 20th at a low. This may be another month's low here, or a prominent trough here. Out of which on the 21st there's sideways fluctuations with a bullish trend preceding a decline. Day's high on the 22nd towards the early part of the day, and there's a notable drop on a one-day chart. It'll stand out from that day's high. One swing trade opportunity, it looks like, to close a swing trade most likely in the midst of a decline that increases with momentum moving into the low. Looks like resistance is met early part of the day at that high, and its key resistance on a multi-day chart. Volume or volatility will, or both volume will kind of like peter out around that price level, and then key resistance level again. A new resistance level is created. There's a correlation to a rally along diagonal trend line, breaking through horizontal resistance, meeting secondary resistance, and then pulling back to somewhere between those two price levels. That's on the 23rd. Two local lows on a one-day chart for the 23rd, and it looks like the closing of a swing or the opening of a swing trade and a day trade here. So three trade opportunities. One that forms when we have profit taking from an overbought crest, Another one that forms when we have the completion of a bullish trend marked by a fast sudden move, completion of a bearish trend marked by a fast sudden move to the upside. And another trade that forms when we have a big move down to meet, actually a big move higher. We're there briefly and then we fall sharply from it. The two local lows on the 23rd, so on a one-day chart for the 23rd, two prominent lows. One will form after there's a brief visiting of an opportunity at a crest or peak, and then the other local low will form when we attempt to establish support on a one-day chart. So it looks like between the 13th and the 24th, there's notable breakdown through some important price levels. But and then that all kind of like culminates with a unicursal on the 25th. So some volatility on the 24th, a trade opportunity to close a swing trade in the midst of a big move higher and then lower. Excuse me, and then one local low that forms on a one-day chart for the 24th when we attempt to establish support on a one-day chart. Multiple headwinds pushing Bitcoin lower on the 25th. One local low in the midst of that that forms after we break down through multiple support levels. And then on the 26th, and that's on multiple support levels on a one-day chart. On the 26th, we have a big move to the upside. We have a big move to the upside to reach distant resistance at the high for the 26th. The 27th, there's a failed attempt to break through key resistance. There's a failed attempt to break through key resistance, followed by a decline through support at one of the local highs on the 27th. But there's a breakdown to and through a support level to meet a secondary support. We bounce along it sideways for a bit and then break down through multiple support levels on the 27th. So on the 26th, there's an opportunity in the midst of that rally to open up a short position. And then on the 27th, oh wow, here's a good trade. So on the 27th, we break down. So I think we have a month's high here on the 26th in the midst of this Ace of Wands. It would make sense when we look at the 1 year. We have the victory card here and a lot of fire cards here. But in any case, so Ace of Wands likely a month's high or a very prominent crest here between the 26th and the 28th, but I'm leaning towards the 26th. And then we break down from there. Breaking down through multiple support levels. On the 28th, we have a decline. Either we have a decline from a month's high on the 28th, or the 26th with the month's high, and we decline from that, with continuing into the 28th. And on the 28th, there's an opportunity to close a short position, open a long position. On the 29th, we have multiple. We have a lot of bumping along of resistance levels. It's inverted though, so something significant here on the 29th. Bullish price swings. But we break down from a resistance level. So we meet a distant resistance level on the 29th, and then we, on a one-day chart, and then we break down from there. Looks like we have a prominent trough or an important low on the 30th, from which we should likely rally. We do some sideways rotation as a sneak preview for the following month, and we revisit a support level that was a recent past opportunity. But when you look at this all on the overview for the year, the end of September, we have that like sideways fluidity along a support level. There's notable moves out of the lows here, and then we reach a high in October. And that's Bitcoin for September 2022, my friends. Let me know you like it by hitting that like button. Don't forget to subscribe if you have done so. Don't forget to share, my friends. It's really appreciated. That's best way you can help show some support. It's one of the best ways. Remember that rule of karma. Take 10% of the profits you make from this information, put it aside and cut it in half. Half of that goes, pay it forward, keep the flow going. Other half goes back to us as gratitude. Help support the team here for doing all the free work that we do. And then the remaining 90%, do what you got to do with it. Just make sure it's out of love, my friends. As long as it's out of love, you're good to go. The universe will send it back to you tenfold. Another way you can support us is by buying your Bitcoin through our affiliate link for Simple Swap, which is where you can swap all different types of coins between each other. You don't necessarily need to use only like one type of coin to get there. You can swap between them. You can purchase all types of altcoins, and you can support the channel by doing so. That's Bitcoin, my friends. I'll see you in the next one.